Okay, so if there was one movie where a superhero snapping a villain's neck would be appropriate, it would have been this one. What's going on, and welcome to Joe's Geek Show, the video series we talk comics and occasionally comic book movies. And this time we are going over Wonder Woman 1984. And once again, being directed by Patty Jenkins, this movie stars Gal Gadot as Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman. We've also got Chris Pine returning as Steve Trevor, but also coming on board, we've got Kristen Wiig as Barbara, aka the Cheetah, and the Mandalorian himself, Pedro Pascal, as Maxwell Lord. And this movie is interesting to say the least. It starts off with a flashback. Diana's once again a kid and she's doing this race on Themyscira. And it kind of seems the purpose of this scene is to sort of initiate the theme that, hey, you know, you gotta live in truth. If you achieve what you want through a lie, that's really no victory. Because Diana as a kid did the race and she cheated, which is pretty much the whole scene. So then we move to the present day, aka 1984, where Diana's going around, she's doing Wonder Woman things, and boy is it 80s. And when I mean 80s, I mean you've got everything, you know, the clothes, the arcades, just everything, the music, the lights. It is so 80s, and boy do I love it. Makes me want to put on a pair of Lee jeans, a new pair of zips, and get down to the mall for some chili fries. And after some superheroing, we get introduced to our next character, Barbara, played by Kristen Wiig, who will become the Cheetah. How do you know she'll become the Cheetah? Because she is pretty much one of the biggest tropes in comic book movies, where if you know she's gonna be a femme fatale villain later on in the movie, she's gotta be this bumbling, awkward, nobody likes her kind of character. But anyway, she works at the Smithsonian with Diana Prince herself, and she's going through some artifacts that were involved in a robbery earlier in the movie, and this is where we get introduced to our MacGuffin of the movie, this stone that if you touch it, you get one wish. And how do you know it's the MacGuffin of the movie? Well, because Maxwell Lord, played by Pedro Pascal, he also wants this stone because he's got this failing oil business, and he's like, man, if I can get my hands on that stone, we can get some wish stuff going, and I can be rich and famous. So of course, after a couple wishes are made, he manages to get his hands on the stone, wishes that he was the stone itself, and the world is now falling into chaos, and this is our movie. And oh yeah, Chris Pine's in this movie, which he does again return as Steve Trevor, but it's not Steve in his body. Oh no. See, Diana's wish was to be able to see Steve again, but in order to make this happen, Steve's soul essentially gets implanted, you know, quantum leap style, I guess, into this stranger in the movie that Diana doesn't know and acknowledges she doesn't know until he starts talking. And after a few moments, she realizes, okay, this is Steve in this body. And then all she sees is Steve. So when we're seeing Chris Pine, this is more in a symbolic nature, because everyone else in this movie that would be looking at this guy would be seeing the guy that Steve took over rather than Steve himself, which is kind of awkward when you think about them going on harrowing adventures and, you know, getting gunshot at them, because, you know, they're essentially putting a complete stranger in jeopardy. I mean, this guy's got family, he's maybe got some friends, and of course a few other things that could potentially bring Diana up on assault charges. And how was the movie? Now, to be fair, there were some elements in this movie that I did like. I liked some of the ideas that were presented in the movie, particularly, like, say, with Maxwell Lord and the relationship with his son. And to me, that was a bit of a missed opportunity, because his son is in a couple of scenes, and then not to the very end of the movie do we understand Maxwell's true motivation of why he really wants to be a winner, both in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of his son. It's information I think should have been presented a little earlier in the movie in order to make our antagonist just a little bit more sympathetic. Because outside of a couple scenes with his son, I'm just not liking the guy at all. Pedro Pascal does well with what he's given, but the character itself, I really wouldn't have minded if Diana had snapped his neck. I also like the scenes with Steve when he's walking around with Diana, and it's really that, fish out of water story, but instead of Steve leading Diana around, Diana's leading Steve around. And I think these are actually some pretty good scenes. And at least at the beginning of the movie, the whole 80s thing was really nice, and it was a little disappointing to kind of see this, big draw about this kind of wanting to feel like mid to late 80s action movie, and just kind of seeing the 80s stuff kind of meld away. I mean, yeah, we still see like, some of the clothes and like the TVs are still from that time, but the tone just completely changes and feels rather inconsistent with what it was trying to do. Because as it stands, this movie kind of feels like it's got some kind of, what's the phrase? It's like an identity thing, and there's like maybe some kind of crisis with it, and just yeah, that works. Not to mention the CGI in this movie is horrendous. Oh my gosh, especially when it comes to like the end fight between Diana and Cheetah. I mean, this scene takes place at night, and I would assume that is due to the fact that they are trying to cover up the really bad CGI. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think cats did the anthropomorphic feline thing a bit better. And there was also these weird sequences where, Diana, she's in her Wonder Woman costume and stuff, and she's like, chasing the bad guys like in Egypt, and there was really no collision happening with the ground. Like, she's running, but there seems to be like, no collision, no tread or anything like that. She's not bouncing with the ground or anything like that. It's just one smooth motion that just looks really awkward. And as well, combined with that scene where she's trying to rescue these two kids that are playing in the road, and I don't know why these kids are in the road. There's oncoming traffic, and yeah, their parents completely failed them. But Diana, she goes ahead, swings in, and saves them, and I swear this looks like a scene out of a Spider-Man movie. And then to top it all off, she lands on the kids. Now at this point, Diana's kind of losing her powers a little bit, but kind of feel like, that was a pretty hard land, maybe a couple broken bones or some fractures potentially. Oh yeah, and Diana's losing her powers because, on top of this whole magical source stone that grants wishes, we're kind of also playing a little bit of Superman 2 here. What do I mean by Superman 2? Well, let's see if this sounds familiar. You have a main character that sacrifices their powers, willingly or not, in order to be with the ones they love, and then in order to finish the fight against the final villain of the movie, they have to get their powers back by essentially sacrificing their own happiness. Also, the cinematography in this movie is just crazily inferior to the first movie. I mean, they try to bring out the vibrancy in like Diana's outfit and stuff, and the scene with the fireworks, but ultimately the way it's framed and shot and color graded just looks kind of bland. It's just ordinary. Also, the main theme of truth doesn't really get tied back in any real meaningful way. You just hear it once at the beginning and it pops up at the end. And really the themes of human desire and wants versus needs shine through a lot more and seem to be a lot more prevalent, and I don't feel like that was the intention. Not to mention, Diana is very much against killing Maxwell Lord and killing Cheetah and stuff, but is perfectly happy with sacrificing the life, essentially, of the man that Steve is inhabiting in order to have Steve. So there's a little inconsistency and conflict with her character going on here. And even then, when it comes to the scene where Diana relinquishes her wish and essentially lets Steve go back to the land of the beyond and the dead and all that, it's not a decision she came to on her own, but rather Steve convinces her to relinquish her wish in order for her to be able to get her powers back. Even as the world is falling apart around them, Diana still won't pull the trigger, and I really feel like we missed out on what could have been a really good character arc where she came to the decision on her own to let Steve go. And that also seems a bit counterintuitive to the movie's main theme. If Steve himself didn't want to go, Diana would have been perfectly happy living in the lie. And then when you reach the end of the movie, you start thinking about the greater DCEU, where at the end of this movie, she really looks like she's moved on, she's ready to date other guys, she's ready to just get back out there into the world. And then when you get to Justice League, she's back to being hung up on Steve. It's kind of one of the problems when you're working within a cinematic universe. You sort of kind of gotta look back about what came before so you don't contradict yourself. But in the end, this movie just didn't tie together well for me and is an inferior sequel. It doesn't tie in well to the greater DCEU and really is on track to being one of my least favorite DCEU movies overall. So, unfortunately, I gotta give this movie a thumbs down. But anyway, that was Wonder Woman 1984, and what did you think about this movie? Did you like it? Did you not? Please tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you liked this video, I'd love it if you'd smash that like button, share it with some friends, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and ring that notification bell for more comic book content. And if you're wondering what to watch next, consider one of these two videos. And don't forget to check out some other movie reviews in this playlist right up here. Alright, take care, have a great day, and as always, stay geeky.